Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Okay, you guys, today I'm bringing you a video that I'm just so excited about. This isn't a new concept by any means. I've even made a few videos like this one before, but in my effort to continue pushing historical romance this year, I've been trying to come up with creative ways to kind of remake a few videos I've made before, but make them historical romance focused. And so I felt really smart about the idea for this one. But again, I have done one that I think I've kind of included a few of these in before. But as you can tell from the title, this is going to be a, if you like this, try this, with the idea of taking a book that I have really enjoyed that is contemporary or dark romance and giving you a corresponding book that is a historical romance that if you like the vibe or the tropes, or a few of them, it's even more of just like the feel. Like you'll see, not all of them is this a perfect match for, but you know, nobody wants to read the exact same story over and over again either. So there's going to be a little bit of variation going on. But I feel pretty good. I think I actually have 11 different recommendations for this one. And what's fun is this will go the other way as well, right? If you mostly read historical romance and you want to try branching off into some others, I think this obviously goes the other direction as well. So we're going to dive right into these. I'm going to try my bestest not to go into full deep dive for all of these books. That would be difficult for me for some of them because I like them, but I'm going to focus most on, you know, what the comparisons are. But otherwise, we're going to dive right into this, and I'm so excited. I do have my notes for some of these because some of them, it's been a while since I've read the book. But you know, that always happens. We're just going to go ahead and dive in. So starting off with some that I'm very excited about. So where did I set those ones? Here we go. So for each of these, I will start with the contemporary and then I'll share what the historical is. Okay. So first up here, we have Ruthless Stranger by Maggie Cole. This is a very beloved Mafia romance for me. I enjoy the Mafia wars so much. In fact, I may even be tempted to dive back into Maggie Cole because she does have a second generation of Mafia war she's working on. So maybe we'll see. But for sure, I love this series, and particularly the first 5 in this series are really strong. So the setup of this one is that our heroine is a divorcee and she's having kind of a, you know, single again weekend in Vegas, and she really wants to have this like wild and fun night where there's no strings attached, none of that. And this one man who happens to be there for like a bachelor weekend with his family, he also happens to be a part of the mob back in Chicago, but they're there for this weekend. And he overhears some of the dreams that she has, desires, and he ends up connecting with her friends and saying, hey, you should hook me up with your friend and I will give her a night she'll never forget. She'll be blindfolded. She won't know it's me. It's going to be great. Now, I'm not sure what type of friends would like let that happen, but we're just going with it. We're going to say that it was going to be safe and like her friends were watching out for her, you know, in case this went wacko. But they do. They have this super hot night together. Well, he blindfolds her. Super sexy night. They end up doing it again as well, both nights that she's staying there. And then they're just supposed to go back to their life, and these memories they had in Vegas are just supposed to be really great. Of course, then when they both get back to their life in Chicago, they end up discovering that they're actually working together on a project. Like his family is partnering with, I believe it's like the local government for a project that's happening. And yeah, they meet again, and you know, it's that classic, like, one night stand. We didn't exchange any names. He mostly didn't tell her his name because he wanted to keep her safe because his family is in the Mafia and it wouldn't be safe. But now that he knows who she is and that they live in the same city, it's going to be impossible for him to stay away from her. So which book that's a historical would I possibly compare that to? So I actually went with Slightly Wicked by Mary Ballock. So this is a shiny cover, but let me just tell you kind of this. This is a part of the Bedouin series, the Bedouin saga. And this one is about Ranulph Bedouin, and he's a hard man to resist. And so when Judith Law, a woman in need of rescue, when her stagecoach overturns, Ranulph is simply her savior. A heroic stranger she will reward with one night of reckless passion before she must become a companion to her wealthy aunt. Imagine Judith's shock when the same stranger turns out to be among England's most eligible bachelors, and when he arrives at Harwood Grange to woo her cousin. Certainly they had made no vows, no promises, but Ranulph never did forget his uninhibited lover, nor did she forget that one delicious night. And as scandal sets the household abuzz, Ranulph proposes a solution, but when Judith refuses to have him in love or wedlock, Ranulph has only one choice: to wage a campaign of pure pleasure to capture the heart of a woman who has already won his. So I think these compare very well, not only because they had both this anonymous night and then they run into each other again, but also because, like our heroine in Ruthless Stranger, she's just gotten out of a very long marriage that was not very healthy for her or good for her. So she's not ready to commit to someone. And I think that compares kind of well to this one, where our heroine, like, just because she is kind of a spinster who's going to be a companion, it doesn't mean that she isn't happy with that. And, you know, Ranulph is kind of like, well, but I'm such a better option than being alone. And, you know, maybe you're not to everyone. So he's going to have to convince her for them to be together. So that is my first, if you like this, try this comparison. All right, let's do another really fun one here. We're just sticking kind of with some of these Mafia ones and comparing those. So we have Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. This one I think is actually a pretty easy one to find ones that match with it, because there are a lot of arranged marriages in historical romance. They exist, but I wanted there to be one where there was quite a bit of like animosity between the families, and so there's a lot of tension with the heroine now going to be with the hero. I also wanted to be one where the heroine still has a loving family. It's not that they are handing her off just because they don't like her or that they want to use her as property to do this. It's because, like, they have to make this peace deal or it's going to be bad for everyone, right? And then there's lots of snark, there's lots of hijinks, there's lots of trouble that these two get butting into heads with each other. And this is literally the Mafia rom-com, okay? Everybody says that about it, and it's kind of true, okay? It's delightful. Again, I'm a Sophie Lark stan. We know it. So, you know, there's that. But a book that I wanted to kind of bring back into people's attention, which is an older favorite of everyone, and I actually reread this one recently because I annotated it for a patron and it reminded me of it, and that is actually The Bride by Julie Garwood. So this book also has like kind of feuding families, and the king's edict is that Alec Kincaid must take an English bride. And Jamie is the youngest daughter of the Baron Jameson and is his choice. And from his first glimpse of her proud and beautiful English lady, Eric felt a burning hunger stir within him. This was a woman worthy of his fearless warrior spirit, and he aches to touch her, tame her, and possess her. So, and what I also think is a lot like Ada in Jamie is that Jamie says she pledges a secret oath when she marries him that she will never surrender her love to this Highland barbarian. He was everything her heart warned her against, an arrogant, brooding scoundrel whose rough good looks and seductive embrace fire her blood. And so that is where I think that like Jamie and Ada are very similar, is that they may be forced into this marriage. She may be forced into his home, but she's not just going to make things easy for him. But yet their like kind of hate very quickly translates into a really hot passion between the two of them. And I think that that is definitely similar between these two. So I feel very proud of that comparison for sure. Alrighty. Yeah, like I said, we're going to keep going with some of these Mafia ones. So, another one that I really enjoyed this comparison here. So, we have Vicious Hearts by J.R. Cole. Now, this one is definitely more of a jump for comparison. So, there are very few dark historicals I read that I also still really liked. So, hold on, I'll pull up because I do have the notes to talk about this one when I get to the historical. So, Vicious Hearts is probably my favorite J.R. Cole that I've read. I did end up getting a little bit burned out with his books eventually, but when I was in the thick of it, this book was my favorite, right? So this one has Killian Kildare. He's a little bit bent in the mind. He's the head of kind of the Irish mafia in the area, and he has a cold black heart, and he's just very like immovable. he's someone that even his family isn't quite sure of him. Like, they know that he'll protect them, but he also is very scary. Like, he's a scary dude, okay? But he does have a soft spot for his family members, right? So we love that about him. Now, the heroine in this one, Una, she's actually sent to kill him. And in a sex club, she actually goes undercover and she trades like her virginity for the chance to murder him. Okay, now she fails at murdering him, and as kind of punishment, kind of he's impressed by her, kind of he wants to keep an eye on her, he actually forces Una to marry him and be in this unholy marriage of convenience. And it's only supposed to last for a certain amount of time. It's supposed to last for 6 months. And they're going to have all the sex that they want to have. But at the end of that, it's going to be over. So that's kind of what the Vicious Hearts is in here. Now, also to bring up, this does have to do with, she has family grievances against him and she blames him, and she's been told to blame him for certain things that have happened with her family. So keep that in mind as we talk about what this one compares to. So the historical that I drug up for this one, I read this one quite a while ago, but I remember just like eating it up. There's really good audiobooks for this one as well. There is actually The Villain by Victoria Vale. And this is a part of a duology. It's a villain duology. So you can actually buy them in a bind up at this point and you just read them really quick here. And this one is a dark Regency erotic romance set in the wilds of Scotland. Love it. Okay, we love to see it. So this one, we have Lady Daphne Fairchild, and she braves the journey from London to Scotland along with a purpose of mind to confront the man who purposely and methodically set out to ruin the men of her family, right? So we see those comparisons, anger in the families there. But in exchange for answers, he demands that Daphne stay with him. So it's a bit of like a Beauty and the Beast thing too, for 30 days and nights and be in his bed. And she has to do whatever he wants her to do. And at the end of that, he's going to give her the answers that she seeks. So again, you can kind of see there's like a time limit on it. It involves like doing whatever sexually that he wants to do with her. And of course, like his plan is to not give her what she wants. Like he's going to ruin her and then like send her on her way. And so there's some comparisons within that. So I do think this is a pretty good comparison between those two stories. Yeah. So again, pretty proud of that connection. Okay, next up, I have another kind of a throwback book for you guys. And I have heard from Kresley Cole's assistant that we will be getting some re-releases of these. And I'm excited about it because I do actually have an old library copy of this one. But this is The Master by Kresley Cole. And this is part of the Game Maker series, which is like Mafia/Mafia adjacent. It's not completely there, but like the first book is more Mafia. This one, he's more like dirty businessman type thing. But in this one, we have Max, who prefers tall, obedient blondes to fulfill his desires. And he very much calls in escorts. He doesn't want to deal with romantic entanglements. And so he very much likes obedient women. He likes the BDSM. He wants them to do what he says. But then one time we actually have a disobedient brunette whose exquisite little body threatens his legendary restraint. And so we have Katerina Marin, who was a well-off wife until her world fell apart. And now she's in hiding and she is being an escort. And so her very first client, which the way it works out is that her friend happens to be a tall, obedient blonde that normally goes to see Max. But I believe her friend is sick or something happens there. And so she takes the place because she does need to make some money. She needs to be taking care of herself. And she's willing to do some sexy things for an old wealthy businessman, or so she thinks. And so he's her very first appointment. So after a mind-blowing encounter, though, things get out of control and they crave even more. But Max like feels like he has to force her to stay with him. He gets very controlling of her and just doesn't want her to leave. And she basically ends up then trapped there for a certain time, but at the same time, her thoughts are, well, I'm actually in the safest place I could be, because again, she's actually on the run from someone. So while she's pissed that this guy thinks he can keep her captive, as long as he's not planning to kill her, she's actually in the safest place that she could possibly be. And I thought that that was just a very interesting setup. So this one, very kinky, very spicy. This was the first time for me that I'd ever read a chastity unit used in a story. Like, craziness, okay? Now, the historical I want to compare it to is her villain. Not the villain, her villain, okay? So the way that this one is similar, we have David Remington, who is very much emotionless, lacking empathy, and he's an agent of the crown, and he's on a mission. And he also enjoys, he enjoys sex, and so he is willing to get sex workers to do what he wants, because he also can pay them to be exactly who he wants them to be. He doesn't have to worry about emotional entanglements or, worrying about ruining any like perfect young ladies or anything. So in this one, we have Calliope Fowler, and she's also someone who's fallen from grace. Her father died, left her with nothing, left her in a position that she has no other choice but to turn to sex work. But she's actually trying to earn her way out of this. Like, she really has a plan. She's saving her money. And then things go absolutely tits up in a horrible way, where the brothel she's working at, which is a safe one, actually closes. Her roommate steals the money that she's been saving, and now she has no way to get to safety. And when David shows up to, rent a lady for the night, she's actually the only one still at this brothel. And so he's like, well, I'll just take what I can get. And so he takes her home, and he's willing to pay her to do the very specific things that he wants her to do with him. But what ends up happening is that he ends up wanting to keep her for longer because he really likes how her mind works and how intelligent she is. There's a skillful game of chess that gets played at some point. And while he doesn't capture her and keep her in his home, he basically decides that he wants to have her around at his convenience for the rest of the time that he's living in this city. Because again, he has a job to do for the government. He's only going to be there for a certain amount of time. And he's like, I will pay you to be just mine for this amount of time, and to do whatever I want. So again, lots of kinky things that he will pay her to do. There's actually some very fun negotiating scenes where she is not super into sex work, right? She was forced into this because she's beautiful and people wanted her and she needs the money. So there are a lot of things about sex that she actually finds kind of distasteful. And because David is a bit fucked up, okay, like he's definitely neurodivergent in a very unhealthy type of way, right? And he very much enjoys like forcing her to submit by like paying her to do the things. So he's not forcing her, but he also knows that she wouldn't willingly do those things if he wasn't paying her. Again, he's a little fucked up. So I thought this was a semi-good comparison to The Master because it has that like over the top, almost ridiculous like storyline. It's very kinky, and then it has a guy falling for the woman that he never thought he could like have feelings. And it's still a bit questionable by the end if he even has feelings for her, but he definitely feels possessive. So that's the comparison I'm making for those two. All right, let's do one of the Noel Adams I have on here, because I actually was having a lot of fun picking some of my author's books for this. I am an assistant for Noel Adams. She has some really fun, very tropey books that she has. This one's a bit more serious. And I actually thought of this one like immediately because I'm currently rereading this one right now for work, and immediately the historical to compare it to popped into my head, and I just knew I had to do it. So this contemporary book is called Counted, and this is actually a book that apparently is based on The Blue Castle by L.M. Montgomery. It's a book that Noelle really loved when she was younger, and this book is kind of her love letter to that. And in this story, we have our hero who he actually has only so many months to live. It says he only has 3 months to live. And so Eve Carlisle is actually a family friend. And Jude, knowing that he's going to die, asks her to marry him. And there are a few things on his bucket list that he wants to finish as kind of like things that his mother really encouraged him to do before he died. And he's like, you know what? I want to do these before I die. And if you marry me, I will leave you my money and you'll be taken care of after I die. And Eve is like, okay, sure, let's do this. So they get married, and she's going to take care of him as he gets sicker, and they consummate their marriage, and they're starting to fall in love. But you know, they weren't supposed to fall in love because he's supposed to die, you know. But this is a romance, so don't worry. There is a reason why he doesn't actually die in it. And I just love this. It's so beautiful. It is very emotional, even when you know, like, you know, he's not going to die because she wouldn't do that to us. It still really pulls at your heartstrings, and I love this story. So, the historical romance that I immediately thought of is one I read a couple years ago now that's called A Momentary Marriage by Candace Camp. And, oh, you guys, this book is so good. So, in this one, we have our heroine who was raised by a cold and bitter father and certain that feelings cause nothing but harm. James DeVerne, sorry, it's the hero we're starting with, he holds his emotions in check. But now as he faces death, he's gotten a diagnosis of death. We don't know in this one how long, but it's not expected that he'll live like a full year still or something like that. So he turns to Laura Hinsdale, a woman he hurt many years ago, and her brilliant physician father. And upon learning that the good doctor has died, Laura is facing a life of, you know, destitution, basically. And so James makes her an offer of marriage, and she will inherit his estate and thwart his grasping relatives. So no emotional attachments need sully their union. What neither is prepared for is the feelings that grow between them as they pursue their eminently practical plan, and when a shocking discovery plunges them into a race against time, they can no longer hold out against their desires. But will their union be able to conquer death, and can a marriage of the moment turn into a lifetime of love? And spoiler, my friends, it does. So yeah, this one honestly has some good like suspense in it, kind of like, you know, not like a whodunit, but there is these family members who, as we said, they're grasping family members. They're very ungrateful. They are, you know, going to be very angry that she's going to usurp them and inherit all of his property. But I just really love this because they think he's going to die. What I find really interesting about this one is kind of in contrast to like a Noel Adams, where it's like, let's have all the sex we can before I die. Let's do that. Let's have pleasure till we die. In this one, they're very much refraining from the physical as much as they can because, you know, he's going to die, and he also is quite sick in this. So they spend a lot of time together though, and they really, you know, she really grows to care for him, and they grow to fall in love. And now it's just like, oh no, like, you're going to die and leave me, and I wasn't supposed to love you, damn it. So highly recommend this one. Truly. I loved this book. This was one of, I've read, was this one the first one? I don't know. I've read both A Perfect Gentleman and A Momentary Marriage from her. These are the only two Candace Camp that I've read, and I really need to read another one because I truly enjoyed both of them quite a bit. Okay, then, oh my gosh, we got to do one of my absolute favorites. And this is the one that I know I've made this comparison before, but I don't care because it's great. So we have, of course, P.S. You're Intolerable. All right. We have a lonely, pregnant, single mom who the man who has gotten her pregnant has basically abandoned her, and she starts work for Elliot at his company. She quickly becomes indispensable to him, and even when she has her baby, he just can't stop needing her in his life, and he wants to take care of her and love her and her baby and just be her knight in shining armor, and it's amazing. Okay, my favorite book of 2023, y'all know it, y'all aren't surprised I talk about this. And then the book that is historical that I'll compare this to, again, you can probably guess because I talk about it a lot as well. We have, of course, When the Earl Met His Match by Stacey Reid. So this one also has a pregnant single mother who is on her own and feeling very overwhelmed. And one of the other comparisons, our heroine in P.S. You're Intolerable, her family isn't in her life at all. And in this one, our heroine is actually on the run from her family because they actually try to take her child away. They want to send her to a home for unwed mothers and then steal her child from her. And she's like, not going to let that happen. And the father of the child is an absolute wet blanket. He was her piano teacher, and her family is basically able to buy him off from her, which is just tragic. And so she's actually started these correspondence with this man named Hugh, who is looking for a wife, and she just thinks the things that he's looking for in a wife are absolutely ridiculous. So they begin this like kind of this pen pal thing they have going on. But when her family tries to take her baby from her, she knows she's desperate. And so she makes this desperate attempt to go and offer herself to this man to be his wife. And there's a whole bunch that goes into that, why she felt like she should go to him and all of that, that I won't get into right now because we don't have time. Again, I've talked about this book many, many times. But a couple other positives. Our hero is actually mute, so there's a form of like sign language that gets used in here, which is amazing. And yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. Just, I love it. This is another character that he's meant to like be very unfeeling, whereas like Elliot is seen to be unfeeling, even though they're both very much not. And the final thing that really compares these is the way that these men treat these newborn daughters that are not theirs, but are also completely theirs. And it's just swoony, you guys, okay? It's great. It's great. And Stacey Reid is just fantastic no matter what. She's a great intro into historical romance in a lot of ways herself. I think that is a really great one to start with. She's very easy to read. One that I read quite a long time ago is actually The Devil in the Deep Blue Sea. Now, there are a lot of books called this, by the way, but the one I'm specifically talking about is The Devil Trilogy by Amelia Wilde. And this one is fun. This is actually a bit of a Poseidon retelling, kind of, sort of, but we have our heroine who, she's an heiress, and she's actually out on a yacht with her boyfriend, and her boat gets boarded by pirates. And he gets killed, and she actually jumps overboard, and now she's drifting at sea until she ends up getting rescued from the ocean. Only she gets rescued by different pirates. Not the same pirates who kill her boyfriend, because there were reasons that they came after her boyfriend. That was a whole thing. But this man who rescues her, he discovers that she is an heiress, and so he's going to ransom her himself. And so he keeps her in his bed, in his ship, and he keeps her his prisoner, and they are going to fall in love. I mean, it's going to happen. It's right there for sure. So yeah, this trilogy was wild. Lucky for you guys, the whole trilogy is out. When I read it, I didn't know it was going to be a trilogy, and there was big gaps in between, because that is something that I've learned, that Skye Warren, Amelia Wilde, those authors do that to me. So I don't read their books now until the series are done. But this one, absolutely, the trilogy is finished. And each book is only about 200 pages, so it binds up really good. So there's that. Now, the one that I'm comparing this to is a historical called Kidnapped by the Pirate. And this one is actually an MM romance. And we have a Nathaniel Bainbridge is used to hiding his feelings, blah, blah, blah. And he actually had a thing, I think, for like his tutor or something. And I can't remember. I think his father kind of like figured it out and is very upset about that. And so he's sending him to this little fledgling colony in the Caribbean to get married to a woman and kind of force him to an arranged marriage. And on the way there, he gets kidnapped by a pirate called the Seahawk. And he's a legendary villain of the New World. And so, bitter and jaded, Hawk harbors futile dreams of leaving the sea for a quiet life. But men like him don't deserve peace. He has a score to settle with Nathaniel's father, the very man whose treachery forced him into piracy in the first place. And he's sure Nathaniel is just as contemptible. Yet as the days pass in close quarters, because again, Nathaniel is kept in his quarters and kept almost like tied to his bed, basically, they really start to have a desire for each other, and he finds Nathaniel very alluring and innocent to him. And Hawk knows that he should keep his distance, but the desire to teach Nathaniel the pleasures men can share, because remember, Nathaniel has had to hide that about himself. And then Nathaniel realizes the fearsome Seahawk's reputation is largely invented, and he sees the lonely man beneath the myth and willingly surrenders to his captor, body and soul. And as the pirate's prisoner, he's finally free to be his true self. So definitely one of the more kind of like tenuous comparisons, but it is also kidnapped and kind of like being held for ransom and then falling in love with your captor and pirates. So this is just, I love Carrie Andrews, and this one is a standalone. She does have some that are series, but she also writes a ton of standalone ones, and I love that. She has some great ones. She has tons of books that are all, I think, romance, which is great. The Wrong Bride by Ken Reed-Amara. So this was one that I 100% am honest about. It was not my most favorite one that I've ever read, but I know a lot of people have, and so I want to give you a historical option if you like something like this. So in this one, though, she's his fiance's younger sister, and he's the man she's always loved. And when her sister doesn't show up on the wedding day for an arranged marriage that has to happen, she's forced to take her sister's place and marry Aries Windsor. And it's nothing short of torture because she is in love with him, and he is in love with her sister, who he was supposed to marry, who dipped out on this wedding, and now she was forced into it, and she's just, you know, like chopped liver over here in this marriage where he's still in love with her sister type of thing. So this one, I actually read this for my Patreon way back, wow, at the beginning of 2024. That's crazy. I feel like it was way further ago than that. But I remember part of the reasons this one didn't quite work for me is that the drama is just so over the top that you just kind of want to slap the people a little bit and be like, chill, like just chill, bro, you're good. But again, I know a lot of people love it, and I would never diss on what other people love, but I would love to offer one in comparison, which would be The Substitute Wife for a Prize Fighter. And I love Alice Coldbreath. I've read this whole trilogy of arranged marriages or like Marriage of Convenience, and I love them so much. And so in this one, we also have the case of, we have Lizzie Anderson is in a tight position. She gets caught seeing something she shouldn't see, and her whole family is torn apart by a scandal for her telling the truth about something. And so she basically gets kicked out by her family. And her only ally coming in a time of need is someone very unexpected. So we have Benedict Toombs, and he is actually engaged to marry her cousin, Elizabeth Anderson. So this was, I love this, how this worked out, because he actually already has a like marriage license to marry Elizabeth Anderson. Now, Lizzie is also Elizabeth Anderson, but she goes by Lizzie. So both of these girls were named after their grandmother, right? So they're cousins. They're both Elizabeth Anderson, but she goes by Lizzie. Okay, it's cool. So he has a marriage license for an Elizabeth Anderson. And so at this same event where she calls out something that she sees and it gets her in trouble, Benedict is also there. And when he sees how her family treats her, now let's be clear, he doesn't have the highest opinion of this woman. He doesn't. But when he sees the way that she reacts, and he sees how the woman he's supposed to marry acts, he doesn't want anything to do with her anymore. But he does still want a wife and needs one in his life. And so he offers her to be a stand-in for the betrothal that he never wants to marry her cousin. And he'll marry her and give her a home and a place to stay so she's not forced into, you know, she was being forced basically into a workhouse because her family kicked her out. And now they're in this marriage together. And for her, she's going to feel a lot of inferiority because she thought he really wanted to marry her cousin. So that's kind of where I'm making the comparison with The Wrong Bride. So definitely this one is a bit of a stretch as well. But I just thought this one was so cool. This is my favorite one in the series, The Substitute Wife for a Prize Fighter. It was so good. This one also involves like a traveling circus basically, because that's what Benedict does. He's a prize fighter, and his family like kind of travels with a circus. It's really great. So next up we have Some Marriages in Trouble. Oh, I grabbed the wrong book, damn it. Grab the wrong book. Okay, well, first up we have King of Greed by Anna Huang, and this one is Dominic Davenport, who is the king of Wall Street, and he has everything. He has a beautiful home, a beautiful wife, and more money than he could ever spend, but no matter how much he accumulates, he still wants more. And he does come from a poor family and from nothing, and now he's made it to the top, and he wants to stay at the top, but, you know, he has this beautiful wife. They've been together for many years. She's been with him since he had nothing, and he's just not realizing that she doesn't care if he has anything. She wants him. And when he misses an anniversary trip they're supposed to take together, she says, "This is it. I can't continue to stay in this marriage with this man I love and watch him continue to ignore me and not make time for us. Like, it's done. I can't do it." And so Alessandra is like, "I'm sorry, my love, but we're donezo. Like, it's over. Goodbye." And now he is absolutely desperate to have her back. She wants a divorce, and he wants to do whatever he can to convince her that this was the wake-up call he needed, and he won't fuck it up again. But he's going to have to prove that to her, for sure. So, King of Greed, the one I want to compare this to, which again, I grabbed the wrong one in the series, but I would compare it to Lady Isabella's Scandalous Marriage. So, this one is a bit different, whereas the couple is already kind of separated. But because we're in historical life, they're still technically married. It would take a lot for them to be able to get a divorce. It literally would take an act of royalty, I think, for them to be granted one. And our hero had really fucked up. He really messed up. And Isabella has just been left kind of devastated and alone, and she's made the best of it because she is a socialite, and she's done her very best, but she's tired now. She wants to get this divorce. She wants to move on, but she needs Mac's help to kind of make it complete. Like, she wouldn't be able to get a divorce completely on her own, especially because he hasn't been abusing her, and it wouldn't matter if he had been unfaithful, because it was the woman who needs to be charged with adultery to be able to, like, get a divorce that way, right? So yeah, in this one, we have Mac, who he is already well into his journey to make himself better so that he can be with his bride, but he now needs to convince her that he is still worth, you know, working through the pain that they went through together and making time for one another. So highly, highly recommend. The one that I accidentally grabbed is I actually grabbed The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie instead of grabbing book 2, but this is in that same series. It's really great. As I said, I have another Noel Adams for you. And then I have my very favorite I've saved for last here. So this one is a part of her Worthington series. It's book 2. But you can read these out of order. They're all about this kind of like wealthy family or whatever. And this one is supposed to be a marriage of convenience. But it's a twin swap. So our heroine, it's her sister who's supposed to be in this marriage deal with the Worthings. And so when she marries him, she really tries to keep him at arm's length, but as she gets to know him, she is really getting a feel for him, and she's like, what's going to happen when my sister comes back and wants to switch places again, and now I'm already, like, in love with him. What am I going to do? So in this one, it is the women who've swapped, so I'll say that. It's a twin swap where she has been like in kind of a dangerous place. So getting married to William is also going to keep her safe and everything. But when she gets asked to switch back, she doesn't know if she's going to be able to do that. So anywho, that is the replacement. Now, there are very few twin swaps that exist. There are a few. And I know that one someone will probably point out is I believe there's like the husband trap or whatever. One of those is a wife swap. But I actually went with a where the male twins swapped in this one, because I just adore this book, and I know a lot of people do too. And so again, very tenuous comparison, but I of course have The Earl Takes All by Lorraine Heath. And in this case, for this book, this is the wild one. This is the twin gets eaten by a gorilla book, okay? But these two brothers, one of them is already married to our heroine, Julia, and she's pregnant, expecting their first child. They've actually had a few miscarriages before, so it's been very tough on them to get to this point. And the two brothers go on a trip to Africa, and the brother who is married, who is the current, like, Earl, he dies. And as he's dying, he asks his brother to be him. And so he takes that as he will. And to do that, he actually says that it was him who died, and he takes the place of his brother, because he wants to spare the feelings of the heroine, doesn't want her to think that her husband had died, doesn't want to cause her to lose their child. But in doing so, he would basically be giving up his identity, which is a very interesting way this story does that. I don't want to spoil anything because it's part of the journey of this story. But it's kind of that thing of like, what would it be like to be at your own funeral story, right? And how do people talk about you when you're gone? Like, those are all things we're going to experience. And there's also the the agony of this secret that we know. Is he going to keep this a secret forever? And if not, when and if is this heroine going to find out? And will it cause more damage than it would have if he'd just been honest to start with? So anyway, The Earl Takes All, one of Lorraine Heath's best works. It's absolutely bonkers, but she does bonkers plot better than just about anyone. And I've just got to say, it's an absolute travesty that Lorraine Heath hasn't been picked up to continue writing. And the last book we got from her may be the last historical romance we have. And I find that a true heartbreaking thing. Okay, Lorraine Heath is a treasure, and we should want her stories for as long as she can give them to us. Okay, so I have one pairing left still to share, but I just hope I have gotten across how truly we need to save historical romance. And I know it's not gone forever. Like I've even talked about, like, there are trends, there are things that come in and out. Like, this won't be the end by any means, but the thing is, what will the cost be? Right? Horror historical romance, I'm sure, will have a resurgence again. I don't think it's gone forever, but who will we lose before it comes back around again? Right? Which authors will be dead? Like, literally, which authors will be dead? Which authors will just not care to take it up again? Will have found something else to do? Will be retired? That is something I don't want to lose. So that's why I'm, going to do what I can to keep it going. Okay, the last comparison I'd like to make, and this one I think is a really fun one too. So we have Heartless by Elsie Silver, my 2022 favorite book of the year. And this one, of course, has Cade, who is a grumpy cowboy. He runs the family ranch. He's the oldest Eaton sibling, and he has a young son. He is doing things on his own, and he needs a nanny. He needs someone to take care of his son for the summer. And Willa, who is friends with his brother's girlfriend, she has the time to be able to do it. She basically doesn't have to work. Her family is very wealthy, and she works at her brother's bar. And this could be a chance for her to kind of get, a fresh perspective or something. She's never watched kids before, but she's very good with Luke. And Cade, though he gives her a lot of shit in the beginning, realizes that she might be the best thing that ever happened to him. So we have a grumpy sunshine. We have her not willing to take his shit. We have adorable child that is just going to steal your heart. And yeah, we have this man slowly just absolutely crumbling at her feet. And it's amazing. Just perfection. And the book I want to compare this one to is The Highlander by Kerrigan Byrne. This book is wonderful. So in this one, we have the Demon Highlander, who is the fearsome Lieutenant Colonel Liam Mackenzie. He's known for his superhuman strength, towering presence, and fiery passion in the heat of battle. So, anyway, he does give Cade energy to me. I would just say that, right? Like, I know they're from totally different places and different things, but just this description of him gives me, like, Daddy Cade vibes for sure. So, he's the undefeated Marquess. As the laird to the Mackenzie clan, the undefeated Marquess has vanquished his foes with all the rage and wrath of his barbaric Highland ancestors. But when an English governess arrives to care for his children, the Master of War finds himself up against his greatest opponent in the game of love. So, defying all expectations, Miss Philomena is no plain-faced spinster, but a ravishing beauty with voluptuous curves and haughty full lip that rattle the laird to his core. Right? Doesn't that sound like Willa a little bit? Okay, it does. All right, it's there. Unintimidated by her master's raw masculinity and savage ways, the headstrong lass manages to tame not only his wild children, but the beast in his soul. And with each passing day, Liam grows fonder of Mina and more suspicious. What secret is she hiding beyond those emerald eyes? What darkness brought her to his keep? And how can he conquer this magnificent woman's heart without surrendering his own? So, in this one, because it's Kerrigan Byrne, we do also have some suspense going on, and she is actually a woman on the run, but I just think there's a lot of comparisons here between Willa and Mina and between Cade and Liam. I just really think that there are, especially with the relationship between the couple and just how they clash with each other. I love it. I love it so much. So, there you go, my friends. Those are my recommendations for if you like this, try this. Let me know which comparisons you would like to make. Again, I have made another video like this, though it wasn't the same with like this for historical romance. I will go ahead and link that up there. But I will have all of these books linked down below so you can go and buy them. Particularly if you can support these historical romance authors, that would mean so, so much to me. If there's any you're interested in trying, I would love that. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to support what I do here, you can either use the links I have listed to buy those books. You can support me through Patreon, channel memberships, or a one-time gift through Ko-fi. Those all help keep us going. So thank you so much for watching, my friends, and we'll see you next time. Bye.